Do you want to get started? We're a couple minutes past, and we'll just kind of let people fill in as they come. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm Christina Hageney, president of Valor Payroll Solutions, and we have Derrick Alexander here with Greater Works Wealth. And we coordinate a lot behind the scenes to help clients. Obviously, I'm on the payroll side. He helps with retirement plans and some other things. But basically retirement mandates are kind of like a sleeping bear right now. And so we can see things happening on the back end that we feel like business owners maybe are not aware of. So we just wanted to take some time and, tell people about what's going on and some options that they have for being compliant and helping their employees. And so that's what we're here for today. We're going to talk about state mandated retirement plans, and not just the ones that the state offers, but business owners' requirements and how they can comply with those requirements, either in utilizing the state plans or utilizing other options. So Derrick is going to be our big talker today. He's the one with all the info on the subject, and I'll have 2 cents to throw in here and there. And so I will turn it over to Derrick.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody that's made it so far, and Christina hopping on this call and just partnering to do this. We believe that this is something that will become a much larger conversation as the years progress. But this is the opportunity for those employers or partner to employers to start getting ahead of it. That way it can minimize the disruption to their business and in the end goal, maybe the success of their clients. So going to the next slide, the main thing today that we want to cover is we want to deliver high valuable information to you all that will help you in your decision-making process if you're in a state or if you have clients that are in a state that has a state mandated retirement plan. So kind of the first things that we're going to cover is what are state mandated retirement plans, what states are affected. We're going to look at, what are some of the penalties, what are some of the other options, tax advantages, and then also we'll cover like how are we able to help, and then contacts and questions at the end. We'd like to keep people, engaged. So we're going to have this be more of kind of like a Q&A, right? Where we may have a slide and Christina will have a question and she'll ask me, but feel free, as the questions pop up, feel free to share them and then we will review them, all at the end of the presentation, just so we can be mindful of time. And we'll start from there. So Christina, you have anything to add? Hey, Christina, are you there? Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna move to the next slide. So, here on this slide, what you're going to see is who are all the states that are affected by state mandated retirement plans currently. And really, I think it's important to start off by asking why are our states doing this? Why was this legislation passed? And I think a good place to start is by reviewing what is the history of retirement in the United States. So when we look at the history of retirement and kind of play that story out, what we know is, right, we originally kind of started off as agriculture, right? And our ability to be able to work and create crops and do various different things, like at that point in time in history, we really worked until we passed away. So we really worked until we passed away. Then we moved into a little bit of industrialization. And in industrialization, what you started seeing happening was you had a group of individuals that literally saw their parents and everybody kind of just work until they dropped. But now they're in more of a industrialized space where the older they are, they're not able to maybe do as much work. So what was happening is with the economy is we had so many, more older individuals in the workspace that significantly affecting our economic output, right? The amount of work that people were able to do. So we started looking at how can we maybe start moving some of those individuals out of that working space to allow younger, more energized people to get in and boost economic growth. And that's when you had the rollout of pensions, Social Security, was kind of like the answer, right? You would provide people a stream of income that they couldn't outlive that would allow them to work. That's why a lot of our, grandparents or great grandparents may have had pensions, right? Like that was kind of like the driver. But as we progressed into like kind of late 80s, early 90s, you start seeing the rollout of 401k plans or what they would call defined contribution plans. And essentially what they started seeing was when they were providing those pensions, it was a great idea at the time, but it stayed on the company's balance sheet for as long as those individuals lived. So as costs grew at the company, as more people retired, it just created more and more drain out of the company. So these defined contribution plans were a way to shift the responsibility of retirement off of the employer and the government onto the employee and make it their way to be able to save. So now we move to 2024 and what they've seen is now we have a retirement gap, right? And so what it looks like currently is that if we don't start making adjustments or hedging this kind of retirement savings, I won't say crisis, but it's very much something that we need to start getting a handle on. That a lot of people won't be in a position to be able to retire as they get older, and thus they'll probably lean a lot more on the government or different forms of commodity, or won't be able to leave the workforce,
These
which will slow.
changes are on the horizon for business owners, especially if you have exempt employees. The Department of Labor has.
I'm having technical difficulties.
Oh, Christina, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. My internet went out. My computer is being wonky. Please continue. I'm so sorry.
Okay. All right. Sorry, you guys. We're having a little bit of technical issues, but essentially, so now we're in 2024. And what they saw is in between the 1980s, 1990s, and now people haven't been saving for retirement. So what what the government decided to get together and do is they started rolling out these they rolled out Secure Act 1 and Secure Act 2.0, which are basically bills that are encouraging employers to start retirement plans. Okay. And the whole goal is to kind of help, start shoring up this retirement shortfall. And it's not meant to be a negative thing. It's meant to be something that is more of a positive. And we'll walk through the positives of it, and we'll walk through some of the cons of it as well. But that's where we're at as a country. We're trying to solve this kind of growing dilemma of retirement savings, and they're wanting to enlist business owners' helps in order to do that. So what you'll see is on this screen, all the plans that are kind of in like a reddish orange color have active programs, meaning that they have state mandated retirement plans and they're up and running. And then the darker blues are more meaning that the implementation is in progress. And then you have proposed legislation, meaning that they haven't been enacted yet, but there's something on the table. And then you have no legislation. The biggest thing that I think that is that we need to look at is there are only 5 states that have no legislation on the table. Everywhere else, there's some type of legislation or bill on the table. that hey, we may look at implementing this type of a solution. Which I think if you're a business owner, currently, or if you're a bookkeeper, payroll provider, advisor, whoever you are on this call, it's something that's coming down the pipeline that's going to affect our clients, and we have an opportunity to kind of get ahead of it and also build efficiencies for it, to avoid this disruption, later on. So that's kind of the heart of it. But as of today, if you have companies, in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Illinois, uh, Virginia, and I think is Delaware, those are some of the main, this is going to become more relevant to you. This is going to be more relevant to you. But for everybody else, like, this is kind of like something that's approaching. Christina, are you available to speak now?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so that's good information. I think one thing, to keep in mind when we're looking, at these mandates is a lot of employees are remote now, or businesses have multi-state workers. So as you're looking, on that last slide in the map, it's not just where your business is located, but where you have people. And then I did drop in the chat just a link. We have a page on our website that kind of goes into more detail about some of those requirements that are in place currently. So I know working with small business owners, a lot of times business owners think that offering like a 401k plan is kind of out of their reach or going to be too expensive, especially if they're, true small business. Like, small business is defined as 100 or under, but really, like, in our realm that we work with, that's under 100 employees. So I know when you and I were talking about these credits, I was surprised. So kind of tell us about the credits and incentives and how those work, and help to make it affordable for businesses that might want to do something all their employees, or do the traditional 401k route.
Yeah. So I think, in the past, right, for for small businesses, right, one of the common questions is, I don't know if I can afford a 401k plan, right? Well, that's one of the unique things and one of the beauties of having of what I would say is the government kind of rolling out this partnership with business owners, is they're trying to make it as lucrative or as easy as possible for you. They're trying to remove as many hurdles for the business owner to start these plans. And one of the big ways are these tax credits. I mean, it's one of the best, it's more than ever one of the best times to start a retirement plan as a small business owner. Just because you've never had this type of tax credits available to incentivize you to start a plan. So I'm going to walk through a couple of numbers. So just, stick with me if the numbers get a little fuzzy, but I think we've broken this down in a really concise and understandable manner. So starting with the startup tax credit. Okay. So you may say, hey, I don't have a 401k plan today. I'm looking at starting one, or I'm looking at doing a 401k plan or the state mandated plan. As far as the costs, are those deductible, or what? Like, how does that work? So what they rolled out is they said 100% of all startup costs are covered up to a maximum of $5,000. And that's for 3 years. So that's a maximum of a $15,000 credit. So practically, what does this look like? Usually, to start a 401k plan, I mean, they've become really inexpensive now with a lot of some of these tech companies. So let's say it's $150 a month, for administrative purposes, to start the 401k plan, or $175 a month. Let's call it $2,000 to $3,000. Well, you can receive a $3,000 tax credit at the end of the year for those expenses for 3 years in a row. So essentially, they're trying to basically put money back into your pocket for starting the plan, which is the first startup credit. Now you have a matching credit, which to me is really where the opportunity is, because the matching contributions are usually going to be, if you're an employer and you don't have to provide matching, but if you do want to provide matching contributions, I think this is a huge opportunity, because this is kind of the biggest cost in this realm, from my perspective. So what the rule states is for every employee that you match $1,000 a part of your company, there is 100% tax credit year one. Okay. So what that means is, let's say you have 5 employees and you start a retirement plan and you say, hey, I'm going to provide a 3% match to those 5 employees. And let's say that equals $1,000. Well, at the end of the year, you're going to receive a $5,000 tax credit that your CPA can put on your statement, that can help offset those matching contributions that you made. Okay. It's 100% tax credit. And I'm going to go to point 2, up to 50 employees. So if you have 50 employees and under, you can receive up to $50,000 in tax credits if you're matching your employees, $1,000, or each employee $1,000. Okay. If you have over 100 employees, it's actually a 75% tax credit. So let's say you had 100 employees, you could get a maximum of $75,000 in tax credit. Okay. Now, it's a 5-year ladder that basically says in year one, you receive 100% tax credit up to $1,000 per employee. Okay. So for each one employee, it's $1,000. Okay. So in year one, it's 100%. In year 2, it's also 100%. So the first 2 years, you're able to get 100% tax credit up to $1,000. Then in year 3, it drops to 75%. In year 4, 50, and in year 5, 25%. Okay. So that's what I mean is over time, it goes down. But again, those were never there in the past, and they're there today. And then you also have an auto enrollment credit that is a $500 tax credit that's eligible for 3 years. So that's a total of $1,500 benefit. So if you were an employer that had 50 employees, in year one, you can receive up to $55,000 in tax credits for if you were providing matching contributions for starting a retirement plan. And if you were an employer that maybe had 100 employees, you receive up to 80,000. It's around 80,500. And those will mostly be there for the first 2 years, and then you'll start going on your ladder throughout. So these are some of the advantages. And one of the ways I always like to explain it is these are dollars, depending on, how your company is structured, that you otherwise probably would have paid to the IRS, right? So it's like we really have an option of receiving the tax credits and maybe reinvesting into our company, investing into our retirement, or, we're sending these funds out to the IRS. And again, I think that's one of the options that we have as business owners if we're in a position to look at starting this. Christina, do you have anything to add?
And with these credits, so business owners can tap into all 3, correct? It's not.
Yes. Okay. Or either or, right? So yes, you can actually get access to all 3 of the credits. There are 3 separate credits. But like, for example, if you're an employer and you don't want to make matching contributions, that's okay. You'll get the startup credit. And let's say you auto enroll your employees, you'll get their enrollment credit, right? And then you're also able to get the tax deductions from, contributing to your plan, right? As an employee, which is another opportunity. But that's why, I would also say, Christina, it's important, especially for a lot of small businesses, that you have a relationship, with your CPA, right? And making sure that we're communicating this to them, because this is such a new tax credit that I've even found that some CPA firms may not even know, or, I've had, employee clients send me tax returns because we wanted to review it. And maybe it wasn't on, he didn't claim the credits, right? So it's one of those things that we definitely want to make sure it's at the front of the mind. If you have a CPA, or a tax advisor, like we want to let them know, like, hey, this is out there, just because this really has only been around for a year and a half, right? So yes, you
Okay.
can get access to tap all three.
Excellent. Yeah.
So, okay.
Old penalties.
Yep, old penalties. So you had the carrot, and now you got the stick, kind of, from the government. But yeah, Christina, do you have any? I'll let you kind of tee this one up.
Yeah. So one thing that's weird to me in payroll is there's so many rules that go into it, but a lot of times we don't actually see enforcement of those rules. So, in the realm of penalties, of course, there's penalties for not complying if you're in one of the states that require you to offer a plan. But are you actually seeing people, are you seeing those penalties actually being applied? And if so, what does that look like? Because again, from where I sit, there's always rules and penalties and interest and all these things that could happen, but it's not always the case that they're enforced. So what's happening with penalties when it comes to these state mandated requirements?
Yes. So from a penalty standpoint, I think this is where for a couple of states it's like getting ahead. But I think looking at states like California is going to be kind of like a great model to almost like see what's happening, right? Because when I speak with employers from all three of these states, and again, there's more states that have state mandated, but I can tell you in California, like when employers start receiving those emails about penalties or getting participants enrolled, like it becomes much more real,
Yeah.
because they are starting to roll those out. And I do think this is something that just from a economy or economic development standpoint as a country, like I think there's going to be a little bit more urgency on, because there is that gap, and we want to avoid that, for our future. But what the penalties are starting to look like is, like in states like California, you'll get fined $250 per employee, per employee that's not enrolled into the plan. The majority of plans have a maximum penalty of $5,000 a year for being non-compliant in the state. Now, the tricky part about this is the fact that for the majority of states, they haven't started sending out the penalties. There's really only a few states that have started sending out like these penalty emails, California being one of them. And so that's where I think the opportunity is, if you're somebody who works that has clients, that are business owner, or if you are a business owner, this is an opportunity to get ahead of it before, me and Christina as business owners, right, understand that we get a rhythm, right, and we want to stay in a rhythm, and then something kind of comes out of left field, and now we got to direct our attention to it, and it kind of pushes back other things as small business owners that now we kind of got to address or figure out how important is it, right, to address. And I think these penalties are just one of the ways that they're trying to encourage individuals, because the unique thing about this is that $5,000 a year limit is the exact same as the $5,000 tax credit that you can receive for starting a plan. Right. I think that's the unique thing. They're basically saying, hey, you can choose to either get, to $5,000 could be kind of taken away, right? Or we can penalize you to 5,000, or we can give you 5,000, right, for starting the plan. And I think that's the uniqueness of kind of what's happening here from a legislation standpoint.
Now, with the states that require, just to back up a little bit, with the states that require you to offer a plan, those states, of course, have a state plan you can enroll in. And we're talking more about the option of providing just a full 401k plan in lieu of using the state's plan. So is there an easy way for business owners who do opt to set up the traditional 401k and get those benefits? How do they tell the state, hey, I'm complying? Because obviously the state isn't going to see that same way as them enrolling in the state mandated plan.
Well, so the good thing is each year you do have 5,500. So when you have a 401k plan, you have to file what's called 5,500s. 5,500s are public information that is readily available for anybody to be, that anybody can see. So what, each state will probably do it a little bit different because the reality of it is it's such a new bill that they're still working out the kinks in it. And it's kind of
Sure.
like a state per state legislative mandate, so how each state chooses to, prove you have some, employers in a retirement plan may vary.
Okay.
But
But
you
the
did
5,500.
speak, yeah, but I think 5,500 is going to be probably one of the bigger ones because you file that every year. So they'll be able to go and look at your company and see if it's filed.
Okay,
Uh,
that makes sense. I was curious. I know that, we see those emails come through. You got to sign up. You got to sign up for Colorado. And it's like, no, I'm not because. So that's helpful for those that are going to go, the other route and set up their own plan.
Yeah, so and to speak to that, like that was one of the reasons why this presentation even came about was because as we were calling upon companies in California, one of the things that we heard that was a pain point was the fact that like business owners didn't feel like they had a choice. They felt like they had to do the state mandated retirement plan, and they didn't know that they had other options. So they almost felt handcuffed and didn't know, like, I don't want to do this, I feel like I have to do it. And kind of like me and Christina spoke about this offline, it's like, well, California is kind of one of those states, you just know it's so many rules, that, so you just kind of go with it, right? But that was one of the biggest things, hearing that pain point of not knowing your options and that there's other plans with more flexibility that allow you to really take ownership of the plan.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
All
So
right.
I was gonna say from a payroll perspective, Christina, how what are some things that companies should consider or individuals that work with companies should consider as they're looking at these state mandated plans?
Yeah. So again, if you're in a state that has a mandate, there will be a state option to enroll in. But again, you still have the option to set up a separate retirement plan to comply with the state's requirements. So a couple things to keep in mind if you're going to do the state mandated plan in your payroll system, those are going to be deductions and not a 401k or Roth or IRA deduction. They are just a straight deduction. And that's because the state mandated plans operate like a personal IRA. So you're not going to be reporting any of those amounts on the employee's W-2. So keep that in mind if you do the state mandated option, when you're setting up those deductions to withhold amounts from employees, that you are setting that up just as a standard deduction, not any type of traditional retirement deduction. And then when you are considering, if you're going to do the state mandated or use something else, with the state mandated plans, employers can't contribute. Now there's an exception in Massachusetts. They do permit a safe harbor match from employers. But otherwise, if you are looking to provide some benefit to employees, that's not going to be through a state mandated plan. That's just allowing them to withhold post-tax into basically a individual IRA. And then that kind of leads into the next one. So because it is an individual IRA and it is post-tax, there's not going to be any tax saving benefit now for employees who are participating in the state mandated plans. So with traditional 401k, employees can do pre-tax contributions or Roth, which would be post-tax. With the pre-tax, it reduces the taxable income for the employee, which then also reduces the tax liability for the employer. So if you're doing the state mandated, it's all going to be post-tax, no tax savings now. Whereas if you do, another traditional type of retirement plan, you do have the option and potential benefit of tax savings. And then again, we kind of touched on this. So these state mandated retirements are based on where you have employees, not necessarily only where your business is located. And along with that, different states have different rules. So there's going to be mandates depending on how many employees you have. Some states consider only employees in that state as the employee count. Some states consider all employees in the employee count. So you really have to make sure you're looking at those rules everywhere you have employees to know what you are required to do or provide. And then lastly, if you are a multi-state employer and you are in a state, or if you have employees in a certain state that mandates a plan and you only offer that state mandated plan to those employees in that state, that of course can lead to some negative effects with other employees feeling like they, are not getting the same benefit offering if you're only doing what's required. So if you have employees in California and Oklahoma, and you only do that state mandated California plan and you leave out your Oklahoma employees, if you have employees, you know how it goes. Like, it's almost like children. Like, why do they get that and I don't get that? And, so just something else to consider if you have employees in more than one state. Are you going to use the state plan, or would it make more sense to do something that's going to cover everybody and be a benefit for all employees? So yeah, just some things to consider. Definitely different implications depending on how you go about complying with these mandates.
Yeah, that's great information. Great information from a payroll perspective. Okay. So what are your options that you have outside of the state mandated retirement plan? So here's what we're not saying is state mandated retirement plans are bad, right? Like, it does make sense for some employees or for some employers, especially, if you're like a 1 to 5 person, shop. We don't plan on getting, maybe it's more of a lifestyle. We're enjoying kind of the profitability of it, and maybe all our employees are in one space, right? State mandated plan may make a lot of sense. Also, Roth contributions may make a lot of sense because yes, they are post tax, but you also get the ability for tax-free income later on in retirement. I think the key is, and speaking to Christina's point, is the options, right? We don't want to feel trapped. One of the reasons why I see the majority of people become entrepreneurs is because we like options. And we kind of want to control our own destiny. So somebody kind of forcing us to do something isn't always our love language, but that's one. So let's say you have state mandated retirement plans. Also you may have to add an additional administrative task of making sure that that payroll and deduction is happening, a part of those plans. The next thing I think you could look at, and this is really for those plans that, let's say, started off with like simple IRAs, right? Simple IRAs were a huge, option for small businesses. But that, what I believe is happening is from a legislation standpoint is they're wanting to replace that with the starter 401k. Okay. So now, let's say you have 1 to 15 employees, maybe you want more integration, maybe you want a little bit more optionality. Really, the main difference between this, one of the starter 401ks and the state mandated plans is with the state mandated plans, you'll be able to contribute, since it's an IRA, employees will be able to contribute $7,000 into the plan. The starter 401k is actually at $6,000, but unless you're 50 and a half, and then you can add an extra 1,000. But some of the benefits are the fact that you may have, you may be working with a record keeper that your payroll company has payroll integration with, which helps streamline that process and eliminates a task, for either an employee or your payroll provider, and allows us to avoid kind of kinks or disruptions in that system. Also, you're able to access it because now it's in a 401k shelter, where in the IRA, it may not have been as easily or readily accessible. Now in the 401k, you may be able to access it in different ways, and really kind of like more like streamlining automation. I think your next option is your traditional 401k. Now, I know that looks like 1,500, but really I would say like 1 to 500 employees, or 500 up. But I think this is more of a conversation of, as the owner of the company, how much do you want to contribute to the retirement plan? How much do you want to save? Or how much do your clients want to save into the plan? Do they need uh tax mitigation strategies, or is it just a benefit for the employees? I think, for employers that maybe want to save upward, let's say north of above $7,000 a year, or like having the option to do pre-tax or Roth, or wants to put in between 23,000 or $60,000 tax deductibly into a plan. Like, I think your traditional 401k is a great step to start. But I think one of the key conversation starters are going to be, how does this fit within your business, right? Like, the last thing we want this to, I think one of the biggest opportunities in retirement plans is adding it alongside the growth of the company and a part of the vision and the growth. If we see it almost as like opposition, then we're always going to kind of look at it as like, why is that there? Right. But if we can fit it a part of like, how does this benefit the employees? Maybe this bolsters retention. We're also getting a tax deduction, and we're also getting maybe some of these tax credits. And now we're becoming a more attractive employer, in our space because of the offering. Like, we want it to be alongside the company as it grows. And then I would say a cash balance plan. There are a lot of different defined benefit plans out there, but essentially a cash balance plan is, I would say, for employers that know that they're going to be cash flow positive almost in perpetuity. I won't say in perpetuity, but it's like, that your business is making a lot of money and you need the tax deduction. And let's say you need maybe up, above $100,000 in tax deductions. Cash balance plan may be a good fit for you, in the retirement plan space. But I think these are kind of like the steps are, hey, let's look at state mandated, do we have capacity to add, another task? Will we like more optionality and flexibility? Maybe start looking at the starter 401k option as the company grows, or as the need for the employer to need to make higher contributions to their retirement plan, and maybe diversify their investments, looking at the traditional 401k. But then the cash balance is when we're really cash flow rich. We know, we kind of know without a doubt that we're going to need these tax deductions. And these are kind of some good places and options to start with, and maybe some good ways to think about it.
And then we did have a question come in. I didn't know if you wanted to say those till the end, or if you wanted to grab that really quick.
Yeah, so what I was thinking, just for the sake of time, I think we got maybe one or two more slides, and then we'll cover all the questions at the end. And I think probably right at, we'll probably finish right at 2:00.
Okay.
Unless you think it's a relevant question, then, we can
Okay.
maybe fill it.
Keep on keeping on.
All right, keep on keeping on. Any questions over? You have anything to add to this, Christina?
No, I think this is a, good screenshot of some of the different options, because again, I don't think business owners know that there are even different types of 401k plans. Like, I personally didn't know that. So just gives some good information about, hey, there are some different things you can do. Even if you're choosing 401k, there's different levels to that. It's not just state or 401k, there's levels. So I think this is really good information.
And then lastly, I think, we want to explain, how do we help? So if you look at this whole process and you're like, man, like Derrick, Christina, it's great that we have this information, but I don't want to deal with this. If you would like some help, what does that look like? So walking you through the steps, I think the biggest thing is if you're already like an employee a client of Christina, I think one of the biggest benefits is the when you're able to get that connection with the payroll provider. What it allows you to do is to streamline a lot of the operations because a lot of the data that gets pulled for a 401k plan is usually from the payroll company. So if the payroll company and what we call the record keeper, that would be who we chose to use. That would be like a Fidelity, a Vanguard, John Hancock, like those are record keepers. If those two can have good relationships and speak to each other well, human interest, like if they can speak to each other well, it eliminates a lot of the manual tasks for the owner and or the owner's employees. So I think that's one of the keys here is the fact that you do have a payroll provider that is willing to actually like put some time aside to make this a priority is really good. But what our process looks like is first the introductory call. In that introductory call, what we want to understand is how can this, what's the thought behind starting the plan? How does this add or what is the question? How does this add to the value of the company? What does the vision look like for the next 5 to 10 years and how this fits? And then from there, based on those questions, we can kind of look at some preliminary like plan design questions. Just around, if you're a business owner that does need maybe those higher contribution limits, you're wanting to save the $23,000 to $60,000, we have we may have some different conversations about what we need to achieve in order to be able to put those funds into the plan. But that's in that first call. And then in the second call, what we're going to look at is a presentation meeting. So now we're going to put together a list of providers that have, I would say, some level of integration with your payroll company, but basically we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence because once you start a retirement plan, you operate as a fiduciary. So we want to start creating a paper trail that shows we've done the due diligence that proves that we've chosen the plan that's best for our client. I mean, best for our employees. So that's the presentation meeting. We kind of look at maybe usually about 3 different record keepers, like 3 to 5 record keepers. And we'll say, hey, which ones do we like? Which ones we don't? And then we decide which one we want to move forward with. And that leads to 3 implementations. So information and data gathering. Again, I think the strength of it is if your payroll provider is somebody who likes working with other people, or if you have a larger payroll provider that's like a Paycom, Paylocity, or something like that, like it just sometimes it's harder to grab that data because you're kind of we may be like a drop in the pond, right? But when you do have a payroll provider that is willing to communicate and get those documents on board, it's just one less thing that you have to do. Like when we're implementing the plan. So the implementation is going to be like gathering a census, of your employees and getting their date of births, just so we can start getting them onboarded into the plan. And then step 4 is ongoing monitoring and handling of the 401k. So what I like to say is we want to keep your employees and you as the owner experts at what they're experts at, right? So nobody sat down and said, hey, here's how you operate a 401k plans. And here are your fiduciary duties. So what we want to do is we want to offload as much of that burden as possible by taking on some of that fiduciary liability coverage that we can offset. Usually what that looks like for us is we usually meet maybe 2 or 4 times a year. We provide a layer of fiduciary oversight. Anything that comes to you as far as like employees or enrollment, question about investment selections or how much should they be contributing, like those are things that we want to handle, right? We want you to, if it's about the 401k, we want you to send it to us and we'll go out and run it down, and then we can let you know kind of, hey, here's what's happened if that's what works for you. And then I think management of service providers. One of the biggest headaches I see, especially with like if you're somebody who has a current plan, is nobody knows what the other should be doing, right? So, if something goes wrong within the plan, who do we direct that question to? Me and Christina were actually having a fun, a conversation about a client, and it's like usually the question goes to whoever that individual is closest to, right? So if you're the payroll provider, and like payroll is usually like the heartbeat of a company, um, you know, you'll sometimes that question is directed in the wrong space. So we want to be there to answer those questions, and then make sure we're holding those service providers to the standard that they said that they were going to provide to us. So that's how we help. Christina, you have anything to add?
Nope, not here.
Awesome. Then lastly, we thank you all for attending and coming to the webinar.